Hello all. I just finished watching Doctor Who Season 2 Episode 5, The Story and the Engine. And I have to say, it's the bestest episode of Doctor Who in the history of Doctor Who, if not one of the greatest TV shows ever made. Okay, are the people who call you names if you don't like something featuring one group or another gone? Cool, time for the actual review. My overriding feeling throughout this episode was boredom and a bit of confusion. It was lame. A little heads up. This was written by Inua Ellams, who's known for writing a piece called The Barbershop Chronicles, which takes place in various barbershops across various locations, including Lagos, where people share stories. But thankfully he's not a one-trick pony, as this episode is about people in a barbershop in Lagos sharing stories. Nope, I'm not making that up. A single location story can work, and given Inua is a poet and playwright, I would have thought the characterisations would be in his wheelhouse. But here the characters are dull and one-dimensional, the conversation's banal, and the villain's motivation dropped in an overwritten, dull, hollow and monumental info dump of pseudo-intellectual drivel. The sets are good and it certainly evokes the feeling of Lagos, but the episode is layered with racial politics and mentions of slavery. Of course, because every form of media with black people in talks about slavery and discrimination. Thousands of years of rich history and culture, and that's all that is ever mentioned. Even in an episode which is supposed to be about Nigerians telling stories, we barely touch on that cultural mythology. Oh, and the Doctor cries, so we're back to business as usual. Okay, I'm going to step on that landmine and address what was actually the main point of this episode. To have an episode with an almost entirely non-white cast. But then who's the bad guy, I hear you shout? I've got no problem with that, despite knowing it was purely done for identity politics, like most of RTD Phase 2. But when you're dealing with racial politics in this show, which again they can do, you have a small problem. The Doctor isn't black. Now, before you start screaming at the screen, I'm not saying he should only be played by a white dude. I'm talking about the character. The Doctor isn't black in human terms. He's just wearing the Time Lord equivalent of blackface. It's not a suit you can just put on. He's never lived that life or had those experiences. In fact, he's one bad day away from changing his appearance completely. So the Doctor referencing race beyond recognition or empathy is kind of fraudulent. He says his skin colour makes him stand out in some parts of the world, which by the way is true of every skin colour, but in this barbershop he feels comfortable and accepted. Why is that, Doctor? They aren't Time Lords, it's not your culture or your planet, it's not even the same species, and we know you're accepted across the universe because we've seen it. So is it purely because of your skin colour, Doctor? Because that sentiment is pretty reductive. Can you imagine if I said something similar? In fact, I seem to remember some horrifically unpleasant people in white sheets and Hugo Boss design uniforms expressing a more extreme version. Also, what does it say about these welcoming people when the Doctor breezed through the crowds schmoozing, whilst later on her own, Linda had a terrible time fighting through the crowd, being hassled, and gets held up by the police? See, this is why I hate identity politics. It's reductive, contradictory, treats people as a monolith, and is rife with hypocrisy. The Doctor is over 2,000 years old, over 1 billion with the timeless child crap. He's a highly evolved being beyond gender who has walked countless worlds, visited countless civilizations and species beyond the imagination, and throughout the entirety of history. He's walked in universes where the laws of physics were devised by a madman. He's accepted, loved, revered as a saviour, a hero, a god, and feared by some as the devil himself. But he feels accepted in this barbershop because of the colour of his skin. Sure, I'm not saying he can't have a place where he feels that way, but it should be about the character of the people he spends time with. This motivation is regressive. As usual, there is a kernel of a good idea. The power of stories, gods and bards, the possibility of exposing the viewer to Nigerian culture, and there's some interesting mythology spun. Fantasy, of course, heaven forbid they would get back to sci-fi. But no, we just get dull, boring characters in a garbage story. Oh, and we also get a cameo from a previous Doctor. Can you guess which one? So what did you all think? Were you as bored as me, or do you think that's just my white privilege and you thought it was the greatest episode ever? Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe if you've enjoyed the video. Until next time, peace out.